Yo, football fans, we are live this Friday afternoon on the Driving the Top production and the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. The Big D ready to talk all things weather, football. Heck, it might be snowing, it might be icing, or luckily for Detroit, they built a dome. So check us out as we break down the divisional weather forecast with my friend Dennis Mickelson. So, Dennis, what is the weather outside your house, right? Your place of employment now?
Well, it's actually quite mild around here today. We're 40 degrees, which is crazy for mid January. But by the time we get to Sunday and Monday around here, we're going to be just in the single digits. So, big Arctic blast coming our way.
Yeah, it's funny if the game would take place now, it'd be like 40 degrees, which for this time of year would be like balmy.
Yeah. It's amazing that we have gotten through most of the playoff season without any real typical winter weather. And that's kind of a very unusual pattern that we have had. They kind of call it the triple ridge pattern that is going on right now across the United States. And that's what's given us kind of this mild weather trend of late. But boy, the old Siberian Express is on the way.
Yeah, we were just mentioning backstage about some crazy Divisional Round games. One that took place not that far from me on the other coast was the epic in Miami between the San Diego Chargers and Miami Dolphins, where they played the game and it was not only hot but humid.
Yeah, there've been a few of these games where the weather has given the home team a little bigger advantage than usual.
Wait, are you thinking of that AFC Championship game where the Dolphins left the field on money?
Yeah, and then I'm thinking of a couple of AFC championships. The famous drive game in Cleveland when it was so blasted cold, and how about that the championship game down in Cincinnati many years ago where it was very frigid. So there have been some unusual weather events that I think do end up affecting how the game is played. And, for the life of me, for the Philadelphia game, I think that's the one that's going to have the most weather impact for us this weekend. I'm not sure who has the advantage in the snow between these two teams. I'm kind of looking at it going, is this really the best thing for the Eagles as far as that goes? Because sometimes weather events in football sort of can be a bit of an equalizer. If you have a strong defense, sometimes that equalizer of bad weather day uh, can kind of equalize things out. So I'm not sure who has the advantage in bad weather this time around.
Yeah, of course, you mentioned for famous Freezer Bowl and Fall Bowl, which we talked about. But start off first with your Chiefs hosting the Houston Texans at Arrowhead the Mall. What are we looking at? Looks like it's going to be cold. There might be some wind, but how are we looking for KC the Mall?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too bad at all. There's going to be a wind, but it's going to be straight from the north. Temperature wise, yeah, it's going to be cold, but nothing like they had for that game against Miami last year. So this is, by January standards, not going to be brutally cold. And while there will be some wind, there's not a lot of crosswind to it. So it might affect the field position game, with punts and kicks, but I don't think it's going to be a major factor when it comes to the passing games.
Yeah, and then with Arrowhead, it's Arrowhead's field's actually a little more susceptible to win because it's an older stadium. Some of these stadiums, like Heinz Field forever was always acceptable. The dog pound, where depending on which way the wind blew off the lake, the wind could have a dramatic impact on kicks.
Yeah, at Arrowhead, sometimes with a crosswind component, you get kind of a swirling effect there that I've seen, to be a bigger of a problem. But a due north or a due south wind doesn't seem to usually be a bad wind for a game at Arrowhead.
Yeah, and of course, you know, seemingly the Texans always play in the divisional round. This is the divisional round, and the Texans never win the divisional round games because they always play them on the road and generally outdoors.
Yeah, and I think this game, I think if anything, the weather does favor Kansas City. They're used to this. They're going to be at home. More than the weather, though, it's going to be the loud stadium. It is going to be deafening at Arrowhead. It always is, but for the playoffs, they seem to jack that up about another 10 decibels.
Do you worry about the Chiefs coming out a little rusty? The fact that Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs haven't played a meaningful game in what 24 days?
Yeah, it's been since Christmas Day that they played a game that mattered, and that is always a concern. But I think on the good side, coming out of that Christmas game, you had Mahomes with his bum ankle. You had, Chris Jones battling some injuries. You had Kelsey that was not 100%. So a lot of the guys that they had were kind of beat up and needed a rest anyway. Will it be? Will there be some rust? Possibly. I'll tell you one thing, Big D, is I'm a big Chiefs fan. I won't hide that. But when I look at the statistics for fantasy football, I can see some things that make me a little bit concerned about this Chiefs offense being susceptible to being shut down a little bit more. And if you look at regular season, yeah, this is one of the few teams in the league that didn't score 30 or more points in at least one game all season. That is crazy that you can be the number one seed, yet you are the only team. There are like four teams that didn't score 30 or more in one game, I think. And I think the combined record, I think the average record of everybody else was like 4 wins. So very unusual. But this has been a Kansas City team where they've been leaning on the defense. So do you need as much from Mahomes? Probably not. But in my statistical tools, my weekly tools that I use for fantasy football, over the last 2 years combined, Mahomes grades out as QB 14, Kelsey grades out as tight end 4, and Pacheco is way down the list in kind of the RB2 levels. So if you look at that offense, you could say, man, they're susceptible to having a bad day.
Yeah, and Houston's got a formidable pass rush, as Justin Herbert found out with Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter. Plus, Derek Stingley Jr. is one of the best cornerbacks in football. I'm not sure Houston would do this, but if it were me, I may put Stingley on Kelsey and say, don't let him beat you.
Yeah, it's weird with Kelsey. Teams that have tried to be a little more physical with him and get him stuffed a bit at the line, they have not done as well as you would think. He's a very strong guy getting off that line of scrimmage. But you almost need a double team Kelsey to really take him out of the game. And nobody's been willing to try to do much of that. And I don't think Houston will either, because I think Houston's worried about the speed of Xavier Worthy. They're worried about DeAndre Hopkins being able to find those seams. The Chiefs have done a good job this year of causing teams to lose by a million paper cuts. These little short little passes have been something to see. The difference in this game, Houston won in the first round because they were able to run the ball, and they ran the ball consistently, and they dominated both lines of scrimmage. I don't think we're going to see that against the Chiefs. If the Chiefs can run the ball against Houston, then I don't think this one will be close. But I think this is going to be one of those games where it's going to come down to a turnover. It's going to come down to a bad play. And I'm just hoping the Chiefs are not the ones making the mistakes.
And looking back to some of the stats from the first game, both teams were 7-13 on third down. Chiefs ran the ball a little better, but Houston's only 1-3 in the red zone, and those two big picks by C.J. Stroud. Plus, I wonder if Joe Mixon even plays because I know you've heard the news. Joe Mixon's ankle isn't right, and he may not play.
I wouldn't hate that as a Chiefs fan. It's,
Oh,
you
you've
always
dealt
want
with enough of Joe Mixon over the years.
to, yeah, I have Nico Collins as my guy for the fantasy playoffs. So I'm okay if they have to throw more than run. But yeah, it's, Mixon was a guy that was on a lot of my fantasy teams this year. Really liked him, and he did tail off at the end of the year. Had a great first week for the playoffs, but it'll be interesting to see what they can do here. If Mixon doesn't play, that's also another factor that would really hurt Houston, and that's the understatement of a lifetime.
Yeah, honestly, I think we'd all be surprised if Houston won because Pat Mahomes is what 6-0 in the division round, 13 touchdowns, no picks, passer rating that looks like my GPA.
Well, in his career as a starter, he has never failed to make it to the AFC Championship game. That is phenomenal. And something as a Chiefs fan that I don't take lightly because I lived through some really bad quarterback play in
As
the
a
really lean years.
as a fan of a team that's only seen what 3 AFC Championship games, I know how you feel. Okay, so next Commanders Lions. The only dome game this weekend, so we don't have to discuss what the weather will be in Detroit because who cares? By the way, first time I went to a game at Tropicana Field, this was in 2010. Grandpa asked me and said, "Why aren't you wearing a hat and sunscreen?" I'm like, "We're going to a dome." But how much do domes affect scoring? Because if this game would place outside, how much do domes affect scoring? Because I looked at the over/under, I'm like, I know it's indoors, but that seems awfully high, right?
Well, the way Detroit has been playing on defense for most of the year, you would think so. But towards the end of the year, they started giving up a lot of points. And Golf has just been a monster at home the last 3 years. It's just been incredible the numbers he's been able to put up. And it's like a track meet team in there. It kind of reminds me, their offense right now kind of reminds me of the old, greatest team on turf, the St. Louis Rams from way back when, because they got so many ways they can beat you. They got speed at the wide receiver with Jameson Williams. They got a guy who never drops the ball, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've got the double header of great running backs. Of course, Montgomery being hurt recently, but when they've got that double strength going at running back, they can either pound you or finesse you and outrun you. And it just reminds me of that Rams offense where if they got back down in a game, who cares? They're coming back. They're gonna light up the scoreboard. But the big difference with Detroit is they've been also able to just kind of slow the game down when they get the lead with that running game. So it's a tough order for the Commanders, but that pass rush for Detroit not as good as it was at the beginning of the season. They miss Aiden Hutchinson, and I think that is going to be, the big key is can Jaden Daniels have another great game, or will he play like a rookie finally in the playoffs? That's the big question.
I mean, one thing that separates Detroit from a lot of teams is that I think Detroit could grind out an 8-9 minute drive.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
offense line could just wail on teams and grind out an 8-9 minute drive. Like Minnesota can never really establish a running game. And if you go on and guess what? Give me a good offensive line team that can run the ball. It's like, oh yeah. What wins in January? I don't care if it's indoors. I don't care if it's 28 below zero. Run the ball, establish the line of scrimmage, keep the other team's offense, defense on the field, keep your defense off the field. Because frankly, I don't think the Lions want any part of Jane Daniels running the ball because Detroit does not defend mobile quarterbacks one iota.
No, and he's not only a mobile quarterback, he's a mobile quarterback who is looking to make that pass. Like the run is the last thing that he does. He does it very well. But look how many times he's gotten outside of the pocket, bought himself some time and thrown on the run and thrown successfully this year. That kid has really impressed me, not just with his legs, but his arms. I knew he was good, but what he's done here at the next level is, with the exception of one game all season, he's learned how to avoid the big hits as well. But he's just playing so much smarter than a rookie right now. And, the only hope for the Commanders is that he could just light it up, because I don't think they're going to stop the Lions offense very easily. But you're so right. See, the Lions, that's the great thing. If you try to bring some help up with the safeties to try to, stop the run, then they'll go deep on you. They'll play action pass you and go deep to Williams, or they'll hit Damon Ra, in stride and just eat you up that way. And if you kind of play back to prevent that, they'll just outmuscle you at the line. And then Gibbs is such a dynamic back. They miss Montgomery because he could pound you and he could just hit you hard and wear your offensive line down. Gibbs doesn't have that ability, but Gibbs makes up for it in just sheer speed and dynamic playmaking ability. I love the way that kid waits for the hole to develop. He's so fast, he could get to the line too quick, but he's very good at reading his opportunities and waiting for that back cut to open up. And boy, once it does, he is a dangerous player. He's a lot stronger than he looks too. He's an incredible ball player.
Yeah, and frankly, I mean, I would be surprised watching one third straight road game, short week after. I mean, seemingly Washington has won its last 5 games on the last play of the game, whether it be field goals, 2-point conversions, touchdowns. I'm like, does Washington have 9 lives?
Well, they've got a great coach and they've got a great uh, belief in themselves to be able to play better than they are. This team is going to get very dangerous when they add another dynamic playmaker at wide receiver, because they will. They've got a
Oh,
rookie tight end. They got a rookie tight end that's going to develop into a player, and they're going to get better on the defensive side of the ball. They're a year ahead of where the Commanders should be.
You imagine this team adds T. Higgins in the offseason?
Oh boy, that would be dangerous, because he'd also be a great complement to McLaurin. McLaurin is an unusual, player, that he can do a little bit of everything, but Higgins can too. And that would give them a 1-2 punch. And I'll tell you, Zacchaeus has been a good factor here late. He'd be a great looking WR3 on that team, wouldn't he?
You could do worse than those guys. Of course, T. Higgins might have greener passes, whether it be in New England, LA, if he ever leaves the Bengals, but that's either neither there. And then game number 3, and save your cheesesteaks, because I think this might be the most interesting weather game of the weekend. Rams Eagles. I'm reading the forecast, and we're what, 48 hours from kickoff. Are we looking at a snow game?
Definitely going to be snow. The question is the intensity during the game time.
Okay.
Looking at the latest model output, it's really, a lot of times when you're this close to game time, I've got a real good feel for it. I can tell you, okay, definitely going to be the question is the intensity of the snow, not not anything else. I think there's a good chance to get up to 4 inches of snow during the game, in that
Wow.
3 hour period during the game. It would not shock me. But again, the timing is so crucial on this. The one thing we're not going to have really, really bad winds. I mean, it's going to be, windy, I guess, 10 to 15 gusts into the 20s. But usually with this kind of a weather system off the East Coast, you would be looking at much stronger winds than you're having. The difficulty with this forecast, it's a very weak area of low pressure, and it'll be sort of intensifying as it comes up the coast and passes through the Philadelphia region. So it's a tough call. Buddy of mine is a TV weather forecaster down there in Baltimore. Been kind of kibitzing with him a little bit on the forecast. The timing wise is going to be the big factor. Sure bet they're going to get snow. There's no doubt about that. The question is, do they get into these little heavier snow bands? And then if they do, who does that favor? Does it just muck up the game to the point that it doesn't favor either team, or it at least is the equalizer between two teams? Because I don't think there's any doubt that the Eagles have the better team overall. But does the snow sort of act as the equalizer? I'm not sure that the snow gives the home team a big advantage. Even with the Rams used to not playing in the elements, I'm not so sure that it matters. They got a great running game, solid defense. Does this just muck the game up and keep it close?
Is this potentially like that 49 Bills Sunday night game where literally one team look like frozen popsicles and the Buffalo Bills look like they were playing in this having fun in the snow?
Yeah, and that game was interesting too, because at the very beginning, it looked like Ray Davis had the better footing versus James Cook. James Cook goes to the sidelines, changes cleats, comes back out, and he's Superman. He cannot slip at all in the snow and goes the distance on a snowy field. A lot different pattern. This is going to be a much, Buffalo that day. It was a pretty cold day with good accumulating snow. This is going to be a mucky, wet snow. Temperature's going to be pretty close to the freezing mark, 28 to 32 when the snow's falling there during game time. So it's going to be a wet snow and kind of a mucky snow.
And generally, with snow, you would think that'd be bad for the offense, but depending on what kind of snow it is, might actually help the offense. Might give the lineman another half second or so.
Yeah, it's a case that the offense knows where they're going. They make that first cut, they know where they're going. The defense is having to respond, and that's not usually as easy. But you get to the point where you're getting an inch an hour snow. I don't think gives an advantage to anybody. So that's the big question. Is on just a little bit of a slick field, the offense might have a little bit of an advantage. In a heavier snow, where you're going to have an accumulating snow during the game, where you're going to lose the markers, you're going to see the deteriorating conditions. I think we're going to be having a lower scoring game than what we're seeing with the over under right now.
And could this, I mean, the Rams already played one bad weather game this year when they played the 49ers in that awful rain game that's in Santa Clara.
Yeah, and it is, again, you can't really equate um, two different weather events and say, "Oh, that's just not a good team in the muck." It's like in horse racing. it, a muddy track at Belmont might be different from a muddy track at Churchill Downs. So you never really know if a bad condition in one place is going to mean, oh, that team is really bad, on an off track. And rain is so different than snow. I think this just could be one of those deals where we see again it come down to turnovers and field position more than anything else. But Philadelphia, I think, is clearly the better team. Probably doesn't take that away from them, but it might make it tough to win by 6.
Yeah, and of course, Matthew Stafford for Detroit will probably have memories of a famous snow game in Philly because I don't exactly remember what year it was, but Stafford and the Lions played a snow game where literally Calvin Johnson turned into a snowplow.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the Rams receivers don't have much of a track record in snow for some reason playing in Southern California. But the running game should be good. And I look at where some of these guys. Sometimes I get fancy and I look where these guys played college ball. Hey, Kyron Williams playing Midwest, but didn't get a lot of snow games in Notre Dame either.
Yeah, I can say this. I don't remember Jalen Hurts having a snow game at Alabama or Oklahoma.
No, no, that's for sure.
I don't remember Nick Saban traveling to South Bend in December. Maybe
No,
that maybe during the playoff, but not when he coached.
yeah, they didn't travel up north in the playoffs in the past, so it's a whole different thing. But no, that's the biggest problem when you try to factor in how snow is going to affect a game. Is you kind of look back at, in weather forecasting and meteorology, we look at analog years, analog storms, where, oh, this year reminds me of 1985 and it was a bad drought. And these are the similar conditions. Or we saw a snowstorm and we say, oh, this storm was tracking from this way to this way at, 20 knots forward speed. And here's the result. In those instances, it's really easy. But in football, it's like, man, we don't have enough data points to really know what's going to happen.
I mean, I remember a snow game in night. Well, actually, I wasn't alive for this game, but in 1985 there was a snow game between the Packers and Buccaneers, and the Bucks wore those white creamsicle uniforms. You could hardly see the Buccaneer players. They look like frozen ice cream sandwiches.
I somewhat
Or maybe
remember.
not ice cream sandwiches, or white and orange, like those orange popsicles with like the ice cream in the middle. They look like orange popsicles.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, who would think we're turning into popsicles, right? And the fourth game between the Ravens and the Bills. Definitely going to be the coldest game, but what else could Buffalo see on Sunday night?
I think it could be a little windy too, but again, pretty much a straight north wind. That's not a good lake effect snow, scenario for them. But there is going to be colder air pushing down, and I think there will be some flurries to deal with, but not enough to affect the game. But yeah, cold, man. That is going to be a very cold game, and I think that does give the edge to Buffalo.
Yeah, is there thinking back to some games, particularly in Buffalo, how would humidity change the possibility of snow? Because obviously we know if it's a humid day that means probably going to be it means good chance of rain. But how does humidity change the chance of snow when it's cold? Because I think we talked last year about how last year's Dolphin Chief game wasn't likely to have snow because of how dry it was.
Yes, the colder the air, the less moisture it will hold. And well, that game, the Miami game, being down, close to zero in Kansas City, that's about as dry of an air mass as you can get down to those kinds of temperatures. It won't be quite that dry for Buffalo. That's why I think there will be some flurry action, but there just is no dynamic support for snow in the Buffalo area and a wrong wind for heavy lake effect. Their heavy lake effect comes with a west wind. A north wind, you can get a little bit of flurry action and some little snow squalls, but not enough to be worthy of mentioning. It's kind of more looking like you're living in a snow globe than having to deal with the real accumulating snow. That's what I think we're going to see on Sunday. And I just think we're going to see a really cold day.
Um, how cold are we looking at? Are we looking at temperatures in the teens with maybe a wind chill in the single digits or below zero, maybe?
Yeah, I don't think the wind chill is going to be all that amazing. I don't think the winds will be too strong. I think 10, 15 mile an hour winds will be top speeds. And again, due north, so not much of an effect. When there's more crosswind, that seems to affect scoring more in football. Um, yeah, 10 degrees, 12 degrees at game time wouldn't shock me. So yeah, we're looking at wind chills in the single digits.
Yeah, and everybody's wondering about how the temperature is going to impact the game with Lamar and Josh Allen. That's why you dropped the quarterback from Wyoming, White.
Yeah, it's funny, while this is not um, a totally, verifiable situation. It, when you look at quarterbacks, running quarterbacks in the snow, the big dudes, man, they just don't slow down. Josh Allen, he should be a little bit less susceptible. Um, he isn't about making sharp cuts to make people miss. He's just about being a tank and a steamroller, and that's why I think he's less likely to be impacted by the wind. I think than what we see, or I should say the the conditions than Lamar. I think Lamar is, the Lamar's not. I don't know if I'd call him a cold weather quarterback. He hasn't had a lot of experience there. You know, Josh Allen has, and Josh Allen seems to play through the cold pretty well.
Yeah, I saw Josh Allen throw 5 touchdowns in below zero wind chill.
Yep. And here's the thing: is even though I don't think there's going to be significant snow, just snow flurries, as it gets colder, the turf gets slicker. Like
The
it
ball,
just is not as good of footing as it
the
is
ball
in
gets,
warmer
the
temperature.
ball turns into a frozen popsicle.
Yeah, it's not quite the below zero really turns crazy, things, but it's going to be cold enough that I think Josh Allen's got a little edge in here versus Lamar.
But then again, if you're the Ravens, you've got a 260-pound hammer and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's the big equalizer. If Derrick Henry, if Baltimore can control the line of scrimmage and run the ball, then it's a long day for Buffalo. But if not, I give a little bit of the edge to the weather to Josh Allen. Team wise, you got to give maybe a little bit of the edge. I can understand why Baltimore was the favorite in this one, but man, I have a hard time going against the home team here. And, unless it comes down to another wide right, that's a possibility as well.
Oh gosh, not that again.
Those two words that
Well,
that cause Buffalo Bills fans more nightmares than
and
anything else.
Florida State fans are now leaving my show in droves, thinking we lost 3 games against Miami because of those 2 words.
Yeah, Buffalo doesn't handle those words well at all. And I remember, that game between Buffalo and the Chiefs in the playoffs last year, and Jim Nance right on the call with the two most distressing words for Buffalo, wide right. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. The team that survives this game is going to give my Chiefs a pretty good game next week, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might. I mean, Chiefs Kingdom might disagree, but I think most of the neutral fans would say, "Let's have a different Super Bowl. Let's have, I don't know, Bills Lions, Bills Ravens Lions." I mean, if we got Josh Allen and Detroit in the Super Bowl, I think we'd be digging New Orleans. I think they could eat a few beignets.
Yeah, I think if you got Buffalo and the Lions in there, you got two teams, you got two groups. One visited the Super Bowl many years ago, over and over and over and over again, losing, uh, versus the Lions who have never been there. And so you got two fan bases that, for different reasons, it would be interesting to see them get a chance to celebrate. But hey, I know I'm a homer with my Chiefs, but I don't think either one's going to get a chance to do that.
Yeah. By the way, you know what Detroit's last NFL champion when Detroit's last NFL championship was?
Wasn't it like 1934 or something like that?
1957 with Bobby Lane at quarterback.
Wow, that's incredible.
And of
That's
course, and of course, the Bills haven't won a Super Bowl. They're one of what? Few team, what 4 or 5 teams haven't been to a Super Bowl. Fortunately, my team's won it.
yeah, that's lean for Bills fans and for Lions fans. This is definitely an opportunity to change history for both franchises.
And I mean, it's not like the Bills' era was full of bad quarterbacks. Between maybe between Kelly and Josh Allen, but you think Jim Kelly should have won a Super Bowl. Dan Marino should have won a Super Bowl, but I mean, John Elway waited until what year 15 to win Super Bowls. That doesn't seem right.
No, no, it's crazy. Sometimes you need all the stars to align to win a Super Bowl, and it's weird because as a Chiefs fan, I'm getting so spoiled. I lived 50 years between Super Bowls as a Chiefs fan, and I don't think I have another 50 years in me. So we might as well just keep winning them in a row.
Yeah, and potentially, potentially, I mean, we get another Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes AFC Championship game next week. Maybe it'll be 117 to 115, right?
Yeah, they sure put on an impressive show the last time they were in the championship game together, didn't weren't they? Yeah, it's
By the way, by the way, I By the way, Lamar Jackson has not played a road playoff game in front of a full crowd. The playoff games he played in 2020 when like culture crowds because of COVID. So first time he's actually going to face a crowd on the other side.
Wow. Wow.
At least I think I'm not because yeah, Baltimore would have hosted the playoff game, the wild card game against the Chargers, the division round game against the Titans, both games last year, and then one last week. Because he didn't play the Bengal wild card game 2 years ago. I think that was Huntley. Actually, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Wait a minute. Hold on. Raven. Yeah, I don't think he played the Bengal. Yeah, that was the game when the Ravens looked like they were going to score a fumble, then in Cincinnati ended up getting a touchdown when Sam Hubbard ran it. Yeah, Tyler Huntley started for Baltimore that night.
Oof. Yeah, it's and already taking a look ahead. I know it's a long way out on the models, but going to be great weather next Sunday in Kansas City for the AFC Championship. How about that? I'm already assuming a victory tomorrow. That's
That
how.
means that means go Houston plus 120, right? All right, Dennis. Thank you for hopping on. We wish your Chiefs well, and you know what? Whether it rains, snows, or the sun's blaring, weather's always going to be interesting.
Well, Big D, as always, man, love visiting with you. Your knowledge of NFL always impresses me. It's always fun visiting.